Are you my mummy?
No mummy's here. Nobody here but us chickens. Well, this chicken.
It's got to be at least 10 years since I've covered anything remotely Doctor Who related on the channel, and with the news that showrunner Russell T Davies, who actually brought back New Who in 2005 and spanned the era that you see in front of you in this collection, with the news that he is actually returning as showrunner of Doctor Who with David Tennant reprising his role for a couple of specials as the Doctor, I thought it would be a great opportunity to look back at the original Davies era of the series, and over the past couple of weeks I've been going through each season of the show and selectively picking episodes that I wanted to go back and re-experience. And it's been a very fruitful re-experience. There are certain episodes I'm still not a massive fan of, but others I've gained a much larger appreciation for. And so in this video, I thought I would do a collection overview going over the entirety of the Russell T Davies era of New Who, before obviously we see what these new specials have to offer with David Tennant. And then we will, of course, be meeting the next Doctor, which was announced being, of course, Ncuti Gatwa, which I'm very intrigued to see what his interpretation of the character will be like. He's a very charismatic actor and a very interesting person. Definitely someone that I'm intrigued to see more of.
Someone tell me what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, apart from that line of dialogue, we don't really know what to expect with his version of the Doctor. I'm very optimistic with Davies having such a great track record of really understanding his audience when it comes to the writing side of these episodes, and you can see that reflected in who the audience was when these were released back in the day, and now obviously how the audience has evolved since then. Starting off with Series 1, we're going to work our way through these box sets in chronological order, where we shall discuss episodes that I really do like, some that I am a bit more indifferent to, shall we say, to put things politely, as we also show off each individual DVD release I own. So let's begin with the 9th Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, in his one and only season.
I'm the Doctor, by the way. What's your name?
Rose.
Nice to meet you, Rose. Run for your life!
Here's a look at the first series box set, which even though nowadays I'm very much in favour of saving shelf space where possible, I cannot deny just how fantastic this idea was for a first edition box set, literally in the shape of the TARDIS. Overall, a fantastic and iconic piece. Opening up the TARDIS box set, inside we have the list of episodes included, which there are 13 in total. And then opening up the rest of the box set, we have the interior of the TARDIS, which is a phenomenal idea. Sadly, with my box set, I did purchase this damaged all those years ago, where I believe the bonus features disc, which is basically just Doctor Who Confidential, the behind-the-scenes look at certain episodes, I believe this is meant to be stuck on the middle panel, but when I tried to restick it, I could never get it to fit properly, so I just left it loose inside the box set. It's not caused any harm, so I'll probably just leave it as it is for the time being anyway. And of course we have the episode guide included here as well, so let's go through the episodes and discuss them in further detail. Opening the episode guide, we have a foreword from Russell T Davies, who goes on to express his disbelief and gratitude that the BBC took a chance on a revival of Doctor Who, thanking everybody that has been involved with this particular run of episodes. And starting off with Disc 1, we have the first 3 episodes, Rose, The End of the World, and The Unquiet Dead, which I kind of find these stories to be a little bit slow in all honesty, but they are very good with character establishment, especially with obviously this being a new incarnation of the Doctor, and we are introduced to new characters such as Rose Tyler in her title episode. And I love how she is so engulfed with the very eccentric man that is the Doctor, with Christopher Eccleston delivering on a wonderful performance that is just so full of mystery and magic, especially when we are seeing things from the perspective of Rose Tyler. Villain ideas are kept relatively straightforward throughout these first couple of episodes. I like how the simplicity of the shop window dummies in Rose represents the living plastic that the Doctor is trying to defeat, albeit it's kind of a goofy idea at the same time. And we get a lot of progression in the End of the World with so many wonderful character designs, and how the Doctor and Rose travel to the end of planet Earth, where Earth is about to literally explode. And that gives us a little bit of an existential kind of crisis for Rose in particular, who sees obviously the world being destroyed and then manages to travel back to her own time period and just see that the world takes over as though there is no end. and that the human race is so ignorant to the idea of the world coming to a close. And I really do love those ideas, which are really well expressed, especially when the Doctor gives us a little bit of information about himself and how his planet is now gone, that we get to relive these ideas of the world of Gallifrey no longer being in existence, thanks to obviously the little bit of exposition we are given in this episode. It's very detailed, albeit very sort of tell rather than show, but still I think it works very well for giving us a little bit more in terms of information about this incarnation of the Doctor. The Unquiet Dead I found to be an okay episode. It's not one I've really gone back to at all ever since I first saw it years and years ago, but I like the Doctor's excitement for meeting Charles Dickens and the mystery that unfolds throughout that episode. For Disc 2, we have Aliens of London and World War III, which on revisit I kind of found to be a lot more childish than I remember. Maybe that's because I associate the Sardine aliens so much with the Sarah Jane Adventures, which was a spin-off to Doctor Who aimed at children which aired on the CBBC channel, and the Sardine cropped up in a lot of those episodes anyway. But I like the concept surrounding these episodes where we have aliens infiltrating the UK political system to try and gain access to nuclear launch codes to start the Third World War, where the planet would obviously be vaporized and then try and sell the remnants of the planet for profit. I just like those ideas, but the execution, it could have been better in my honest opinion. But where it's really at is the Dalek episode, where the Doctor comes face to face with the deadliest enemy that he possibly has, and I absolutely love the acting in particular in this episode where Christopher Eccleston, he gives it his all. The emotion that is shown on his face, the screaming, the yelling, the fear factor, and then the sudden turn of vengeance where he is met face to face with a Dalek that is restrained, that has no working weapons. I absolutely love all of these ideas, where it really does show quite a sinister side to the Doctor, something that we haven't seen really as of yet in this revival. I think that is definitely one of the best twists to his character. There is also something to be said for humanizing a character like a Dalek, which was very well done in this episode in my opinion, where the Dalek is obviously trapped in Van Statten's museum, and the only thing that it really knows how to do is exterminate all living things. And so, with it being a soldier waiting for orders that are not going to come, it follows its only sort of directive being to exterminate all those around it. And then, with Rose imprinting on the Dalek and showing pity and those kinds of emotions, that really does actually affect the Dalek to everyone's surprise. I do really heavily admire the level of writing where you can really sympathize with such a horrendous monster, an abomination like a Dalek. I think that's a fascinating idea. Disc 3 continues with some more incredible episodes, such as The Long Game, which I always found to be very underappreciated, where we have the Doctor travelling far into the future and witnessing the human race basically becoming enslaved to news and media in general. And I love the character that Simon Pegg portrays of the very frosty editor, and how even he is a slave to media and news under the mighty Jagrafess alien. Definitely one of my favourite designs, and I love the level of satire in this episode as well. Father's Day is a great episode where Rose struggles with yet another existential crisis, where she is given the bizarre opportunity to save her father, where they travel to the date of his death and save him, causing a time paradox where these Wraith-style monsters are unleashed upon the world, consuming those that have affected the timeline. Although I didn't revisit these episodes, I still think they are absolutely phenomenal, and that is The Empty Child and The Doctor Dancers, both written by Stephen Moffat, who introduces some very unusual horror vibes throughout both of these episodes, where the Doctor and Rose are investigating a mysterious cylinder that crash lands during the 1940s Blitz throughout the Second World War in London, and this cylinder contains nanogenes which latch themselves onto a little boy called Jamie, who sadly dies shouting for his mother wearing a gas mask, and these genes manage to revitalize Jamie, but also interpret him as the ultimate human template. And so now anybody else that goes through any form of suffering or who dies, they get brought back in this zombified state, exactly the same as Jamie, with a child's mind with a gas mask sprouting from their face. I love these ideas, some really creepy visuals throughout, and the Doctor Dances has a fantastic resolution where the child is reunited with his mother, and that manages to correct the nanogenes, which then finally interpret the human DNA correctly and then correct every single gas mask zombie. I think that's a great ending and conclusion for both of these episodes. For Disc 4, we have Boomtown, Bad Wolf, and The Parting of Ways, which, to be perfectly honest, I didn't revisit any of these episodes. I recalled them and I thought they were just okay, in all honesty. Boomtown was probably the most forgettable, which was a sort of follow-up to the World War III episode, where Wandless Levine survives the events of that story and is back to try and once again destroy the planet, only for the Doctor to intervene. Bad Wolf, however, was a very enjoyable episode, which brings and sort of ties everything together as far as the entirety of the overarching story goes spread across the series, where we have the words Bad Wolf having followed the Doctor and Rose more or less everywhere they have adventured to, where the conclusion brings them to Satellite 5 set 100 years in the future from when they were last there. And this time, game shows have now taken over, which have a more lethal kind of take on them, which I thought was a really fun idea. Some real bizarre kind of throwbacks as well, such as shows like Big Brother and The Weakest Link being referenced in that episode. As the events unfold, we have the Doctor and Captain Jack Harkness introduced in the Empty Child episode, searching frantically to find Rose, only to then uncover that the Daleks are behind this mysterious illusion where they have been hiding at the edge of the solar system and rebuilding their race from a Dalek Emperor that fell from the Time War and has been using DNA from human beings to craft a new race of Daleks, which was a really creepy idea and was very well executed in my honest opinion. I thought it was a great twist. And as the episode carried on, the Doctor unfortunately had to regenerate since Christopher Eccleston was leaving the show due to indifferences with the higher-ups at the BBC. It's been kind of secretive, him talking about that, but as the years have gone on, more information has come out about that subject.
So why did you go? You were so good.
Thank you very much. Myself and 3 individuals at the very top of the pyramid clashed. So off I went.
Okay.
But they're not here to say their side of it, so I'm not going to go into detail.
That's right, I'm going to be calling them later.
Good, excellent.
But it was very unfortunate to see him depart from the show, and I honestly thought his regeneration was very wholesome, very heartfelt, and was an honest goodbye to a wonderful portrayal of such an iconic character, where we are then introduced to David Tennant, who takes on the role. And thankfully, this isn't it for the Ninth Doctor. If you're familiar with the Big Finish audio productions, Eccleston made some audio dramas set prior to the events of the first series, so if you want more of the Ninth Doctor, I think that's sadly going to be the only way we will ever get more of the Ninth Doctor, considering the mishaps that happened behind the scenes. But regardless, I think Series 1 is overall a very solid season. There's a lot of fun to be had with these episodes, some very memorable ones at that, some genius storytelling, and that'll now take us on to Series 2.
I demand to know who you are! I don't know!
One of the more unique sets I have in the collection. This is honestly one of my absolute favourites. It was a limited edition release for Series 2, exclusive to Amazon, and this box set design is something that they sadly never repeated, and to my surprise is a fairly inexpensive edition. If you wanted to grab this for your collection, it does seem to be relatively cheap on eBay if you wanted to go ahead and purchase this exact edition. And looking at the inside there, the top of the Cyberman just slips off, where we have the standard box set on the inside. Here's the contents of the Cyberman headset, where we have the main box set itself, which also comes with a neat art card of Dalek Sec, which I thought was a nice touch. And with that being lenticular, so is the actual cover art for this one, which I believe is exclusive to this variation of the set as well. So we have the TARDIS there in the background, and then on the other side we have the Cyberman there as well. So overall, really great effort put into the covers for this one. And removing the slipcover, we have a better look there at the Cyberman. Nothing too interesting on the other side, but the digipacks included have some absolutely incredible artwork. Loads of great little snapshots from the episodes that are included with this set. And this one is a 6-disc box set, so we have discs 1 through to 3 along with the episode guide. and then of course disc 4, 5 and 6. In terms of this run of episodes, there is a lot of substance to them, with so much great attention to detail to appreciate featured throughout, especially when certain plot lines converge on one another, which we'll touch on as we go through the episodes. But starting off basic, we have disc 1, The Christmas Invasion, the first ever Christmas special for New Who. And albeit it's not a favourite of mine, I did enjoy seeing the other characters fend for themselves for once, without relying on the Doctor while Ten recovers from being newly regenerated, where we have the Sycorax aliens invading Earth using methods of blood control to hypnotize a selection of the human population. Some really unique ideas, and I love the design of the Sycorax aliens, and the comedic sort of sword fight towards the end with the 10th Doctor trying to kind of figure what kind of man he is. I thought that sort of journey of self-discovery, even for an episode like that, was quite fun, as that kind of theme continues throughout the first half of this particular run. And that leads us into New Earth, which is overall kind of somewhat familiar, with the Doctor and Rose continuing their sort of travelling journeys. The only major difference is that the Doctor now has a new face. And this brings the return of Cassandra from Series 1, who was meant to be the last ever human. And throughout this episode, we have some beautiful CG, which to an extent does hold up okay. It's not great. You can tell it's a little bit dated, but the ideas are still neatly represented, especially when you can see the somewhat sort of panoramic shots inside the episode booklet of this representation of New York. With the main plot for this one, we have cat nuns utilizing a cloned batch of human beings as lab rats to treat diseases of the human race, which is something that the Doctor finds immoral, with so many disturbing themes and some great practical effects used where the Doctor is able to thankfully cure this new sort of sub-breed of humans. And we also have a sort of pushed romance between the 10th Doctor and Rose, which may be considered foreshadowing with how the Russell T Davies era ventured onwards. But when Cassandra is in the body of Rose Tyler and the Doctor and Rose share some intimate sort of scenes together, I thought those were quite comical, but also were kind of pushing the idea that Rose did genuinely have these kinds of feelings for the Doctor. Moving on to disc 2, we have Tooth and Claw, which for me is not really a memorable episode. It's probably one I should have revisited in all honesty, but I've never really been a fan of sort of werewolf stories, but I can see the appeal of this episode, with some fun ideas represented, especially the comedic kind of stuff between Rose and the Doctor, and also this episode establishing the Torchwood Institute. School Reunion brings the return of Sarah Jane Smith, and is overall a very fun episode that I always revisit when going through a phase of rewatching some of these Doctor Who episodes, where we have a school infiltrated by a group of aliens known as the Krillitane, and when the Doctor comes across this, he comes across Sarah Jane, who is also investigating this school, where we are introduced to the head teacher, played by Anthony Head, who is also the leader of the Krillitane, and that is Mr. Finch. A very well-spoken and overall quite a striking villain that almost convinces the Doctor to accept their plan of calculating a formula using the school children with enhanced intelligence to unlock the ability to reshape reality. The Girl in the Fireplace is an episode I checked out recently, and it was like seeing it for the first time. I didn't really recall anything about it, and it has some incredible writing and ideas from Stephen Moffat, where a ship is set in the distant future where the Doctor, Rose and Mickey are investigating where the crew have gone, only to find various time windows.
What's a horse doing on a spaceship? Mickey, what's pre-revolutionary France doing on a spaceship? Get a little perspective.
Where a group of clockwork droids are stalking Madame de Pompadour. Why? Well, their ship needs repairing, only with human parts being the twist. And so these robots need the brain of this poor woman to use that as a navigational computer, and to protect her, the Doctor keeps entering various stages of her life, and unintentionally they fall for one another, and it was a heartbreaking ending to this episode. Very well written, and for sure one of my new favourites.
And I just snogged Madame de Pompadour.
For disc 3, this is where the episodes become all the more memorable in my eyes, starting off with the two-parter Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel, which is an absolutely incredible idea for one, but a brilliant way to reintroduce the Cybermen into modern Doctor Who, where we have the characters transported to an alternative parallel world, an idea that hadn't been approached prior to this, with some great philosophical debates about man's reliance on technology, where cyber industries is slowly taking over the human population, and then quite literally taking over the human population with armored suits to preserve mankind but remove the one thing that makes them human. And there are so many great bits of added depth to Rose Tyler in these episodes in particular, where once again she comes across her father, but it's not really her father, Pete Tyler, where in this parallel world, Rose doesn't even exist.
Rose! That is my little girl! Come to mommy, come to mommy!
So there's some really great parallels and great crossovers to look at, especially with these slow bits of character progression and ideas represented with the family values throughout. And I love the ethical arguments brought into this situation about questioning what it means to be a human through the usage of the Cybermen, with so many great establishing ideas for a future story arc to be continued in the finale episode. The Idiot's Lantern is very forgettable and certainly not an episode I wanted to rewatch, where the Queen's coronation is utilized as the perfect opportunity for an alien to feast upon mankind using television, and this results in the removal of people's faces. Getting back on track, we have the crazy two-parter in The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit, with some really bizarre kind of biblical themes thrown into the mix, where we have the Doctor and Rose materializing onto a ship that is in orbit of a black hole, and this is the first encounter that we have with the serving race known as the Ood, which I absolutely love their creature designs. They are for sure some of my favourites in the Russell T Davies era, which surprisingly have quite a lot of relevance as the episodes continue onwards from this point. With a race against time, we have the Doctor and Rose trying to figure out why the Ood are becoming possessed, and why certain characters such as Toby are opening up their minds to the idea of the devil. And the secretive nature of that and the fear of the unknown is something that I think these episodes really do capitalise on very well, especially when the Doctor is so baffled by the idea of Satan when he comes face to face with the body of the beast. Little does he realise that the conscious mind and manifestation of Satan has moved on and is taking on the body of Toby. So many wonderful horror tropes which I've not really seen repeated elsewhere, especially giving us a lot more depth to the relationship the Doctor has with Rose, where he relies on her to make the right choice, where he makes the instinctive choice to destroy the devil. Love and Monsters is arguably the definition of a filler episode, and when I was younger, I kind of found this episode funny, seeing Peter Kay as a ridiculous absorption alien, but now I just can't even bring myself to watch this episode ever again. I did like the idea of a generic man being fascinated by the Doctor, and I think that's something that has been touched upon in later episodes of the show, and I really like Mark Warren as an actor, but this episode just hasn't aged well at all. It's an absolute embarrassment to New Who. Fear Her is not a great episode in all honesty. It's not bad, it's just not really to the same standard as what we have previously seen, where children are going missing on the streets of London, and when the Doctor and Rose travel to 2012 to go and check out the London Olympics, this is where they are more so intrigued by the missing children reports, which all link back to a disturbed little girl called Chloe, who is supposedly possessed by an alien. And it becomes all the more intriguing where her artwork becomes a threat, where her little sketches are actually of the people that have gone missing, with some really bizarre themes of domestic violence, where she is apparently grieving for the loss of her abusive father. I would go as far as saying there are some good ideas in this episode, but they are badly represented in my eyes. And this takes us to the thrilling and overall very upsetting end for Series 2, with Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, where the Doctor and Rose return back to the normal Earth only to find out the ghosts have apparently spawned everywhere, and the Doctor, wanting to know more about this, manages to study these so-called ghosts, only to discover that they are in fact the Cybermen from the parallel world we visited episodes ago that have managed to breach their way through the void. How did they do this? Well, they followed a void ship, a really mysterious sphere being held by the Torchwood Institute. The big reveal was that the void ship was actually controlled by the Daleks, where we meet the cult of Skaro for the first time, a frequent nemesis of the 10th Doctor throughout the Russell T Davies era from this point onwards, where we have both races of the Daleks and the Cybermen trying to take over the planet, and the Doctor is thankfully able to stop this, but at a huge cost, where Rose is trapped in the alternative world as the breach between worlds is sealed off forever. Even though Rose doesn't have the Doctor anymore, for once she has a complete family, but the fact that she would be willing to sacrifice and never see any of her family ever again in favour of travelling with the Doctor just cements how her feelings have changed, and how travelling with the Doctor has broadened her horizons. And the tragedy where they are no longer able to communicate ever again. It's a heartbreaking end and really defines the Doctor as the heartbroken Time Lord. With the amount of depth and detail I want to include looking back on this era of Doctor Who, I'm going to leave this video here just for now, and rest assured I will be posting a follow-up video looking at Series 3, Series 4 and the specials. But until then, if you've enjoyed the journey thus far, please do leave me a like down below, it is very much appreciated. Let me know in the comments, who is your favourite Doctor between 9 and 10? It's always interesting to hear people's debates and arguments as to why they prefer a certain actor portraying this character. And of course, for more videos, be sure to subscribe.
Are you threatening me?